Okay, good morning students. How are you all? I hope you will be fine. Now, you know that now we are left with just only one lesson in the history. As this lesson will get over, our history portion will be ending over here. So now this lesson is literary heritage of India. This is chapter number 4. Now, one thing I would like to tell you that I told you that in history there are how many lessons? There are 7 lessons. How many? 7 lessons. Out of that, lesson number 3 and lesson number 7, it is not included. I mean, it is excluded from your course. Means, according to government rule, we are supposed to teach you, but not a single question is going to be asked from the 2 lessons. So already I have explained you chapter 3 and chapter 7. Today, I am going to explain you the last lesson of our history, that is chapter number 4. Now, this chapter is very important. Why? Because one answer is compulsory to be asked from this chapter. Okay, it may be asked for 4 marks, 2 marks, 3 marks, 1 mark. It can be asked in MCQ, it can be asked in blanks, and it can be asked in 4 marks. Now, in this lesson, 90% there is no explanation, only information. Who has written which book? Which book is famous for what? This type of information is given. Yeah, there will be few explanations that I'll explain you, but at this moment, 90% there is no explanation. There is only information in this lesson. It may happen that I will read a lesson. You will feel like, what is this? Sir is only reading the lesson, not explaining anything. But 90% there is information. For example, today train is going to depart at 9 o'clock. What I explain you in this? Am I going to explain anything? Nothing. At 9 o'clock train is departing. It's departing. In the same manner, which book is written by whom? There is no reason, so I can't explain you also. So 90% this lesson contains only information. Okay. So without wasting the time, let us start with chapter number 4, Literary Heritage of India. Now, what is in this lesson? In this lesson, all things is related to literature and 4 famous university of India where people used to visit. See, nowadays what happens? If you want to study, where you will go? You will go abroad. You will go to Ahmedabad, Surat, Baroda, Vapi, Mumbai, Chennai. Means in the metropolitan city you are supposed to go where there is a development. Okay? In the same manner in the previous time, people from out of India were supposed to come to India and they study here. Still, people are coming where IIM Ahmedabad, Indian Institute of Management. People, students from out of India, they are supposed to come to IIM. Okay, let us start. Man took help of expressions, symbols, drawings and sounds to communicate his thoughts, ideas, feelings and emotions to others. Now see what happened. You must be knowing the primitive man. Primitive man means the first man who doesn't know what to do. Means he was not having an idea about agriculture, about will, about fire, about clothes. Primitive man. He was supposed to where he got the idea. First of all, what happened? That he was moving from place to place in search of food, in search of shelter. One day what happened? He saw one animal. He killed him and he used to eat him. But as the season changes, he feel the cold, he feel hot. So what he did? He just thought that animal skin can be worn as a cloth. So he started wearing the skin of the animal as a cloth. This all you studied in your primary standard, if you remember. Then what happened? Whatever he used to eat, he threw away. From that he saw that from seeds one plant is growing up. So he got the idea of agriculture. When he was rubbing the stone, the spark emerged and the invention of fire took place. In this manner, our primitive man developed. In that time, there was no language also. Just imagine, no language, how you will express your words and feelings. But slowly, dialect after symbols, after symbol, script after script, language got developed. And what is language? Expressing our feelings through a voice, that is a language. So this led to invention of dialects and scripts. These scripts contribute to the development of language. Over a period of time, languages was being used for expression. Language is what? It is used for expression of thoughts. The conceptive use of language led to creation of literature. From ancient time, Indian literature is known for its Diversity. Diversity means so many different type of people living over here in India. And uniqueness. Indian scholars divided ancient literature into Vedic and classical literature. Besides this, some folk literature was also very popular. Okay, language and literature. Now, language and literature is very important short note. It can be asked in 3 or 2 marks. If we quickly look at the history, we can see an emergence of variety of languages in centuries. See, if you go through the history, you can see that so many different type of languages are invented and they are spoken worldwide. In India only we speak more than 50 languages. These languages influence one another and it resulted into development of literature. This language influence one another. See, I am knowing Hindi, English, Gujarati. Okay, there must be people who must be knowing 10 languages, 15 languages. And this way, this literature got developed. It doesn't mean that the people doesn't know Punjabi, Gujarati people doesn't know Marathi. It doesn't mean anybody can learn any languages where he wish or she wish. As a result, some new languages and literature are developed and flourished. Flourished means spread. The best example of this is Sanskrit language. Sanskrit language is less in use in present time, but religious ceremonies and worshipping rituals are done in Sanskrit language. You know Sanskrit language? Now see, Sanskrit language is not that much in use. We only use for what? In exam. Means anybody is opting for Sanskrit. He used to use Sanskrit. And where it is used maximum? Where some religious ceremonies took place. Religious ceremonies means કોઈ ધર્મનું કામ હોય ત્યાં સંસ્કૃત લેંગ્વેજ જ્યાં જોવે ત્યાં use થાય. So in these places Sanskrit language is used. No more Sanskrit language is used now. But in foreign countries they are using the Sanskrit languages. As we give importance more than us, they are giving importance to the Sanskrit language. Generally, language provides opportunity. Language provides opportunity for the human being. Humans for better expression and understanding. India's most ancient script is that of Harappan civilization. Most ancient language was of Harappan civilization, which has not been deciphered, deficit means shown, and so we have not obtained much information about their language. Now, anybody is not having any proof, means anybody is not having any material regarding it, so they are not able to discuss it in detail. Maharshi Panini was a great grammarian. He wrote the grammar book. Maharshi Panini wrote a great grammarian, great Sanskrit grammarian. He was a great Sanskrit grammarian. The most important book of his time is Maharshi Panini's Ashtadhyaya. This is important. Mark it. This is very important. It can be asked in 1 mark. It can be asked in MCQ. It can be asked in blanks. It can be asked in true or false also. What? The most important book of this time is Maharshi Panini's Ashtadhyaya. Underline this thing. The most important book of this time is Maharshi Panini's Ashtadhyaya, which is a noteworthy book of Sanskrit grammar of 14th century. Underline this also. Maharshi Panini, what he wrote? He wrote Ashtadhyaya. And when it was famous in 4th century. Sanskrit is considered the language of Aryans. Aryans were the most civilized and educated people on this earth. So Sanskrit language is considered to be the language of Aryans, language of sages. Sages is my wise man, or language of scholars. It has been accepted by all the international level that Sanskrit is the best language for the computer use. It is also a fact that Sanskrit is one of the best language for computer use. Sanskrit was the chief language of knowledge, science, religion and philosophy also. So this was language and literature. Now, ancient Indian literature, Vedas. We used to study 4 main Vedas. Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sam Veda and Atharva Veda. Okay. So Veda means knowledge. There are 4 Vedas. Rig Veda, Sam Veda, Yajur Veda and Atharva Veda. Now what is Rig Veda? See, this answer is also very important. It can be asked in 3 or 4 marks. Ancient Indian literature. So underline that also. The most ancient book of Indian literature is Rig Veda. It consists of 1028 verses. Verses means mantra. It is a wonderful work divided into 10 divisions. It is divided into 10 divisions. Wonderful work of Rig Veda. Most of the verses are a prayer of God. Maximum verses are prayer to the God. They were used during the yagnas. Among the verses, those worshipping Usha. Usha means the goddess of dawn, are fascinating. Thus, work describes political, science and religious matters of Aryans who were residing in the region of Sapta Sindhu. Samaveda. Now, Three other Vedas were also composed from Rig Veda. From Rig Veda, three more Vedas are composed. Out of them, Sam Veda was composed to focus on the process of recitation of verses, means making verses. Hence, it is known as the Gangotri of music. Underline, which is the Gangotri of music? Sam Veda is the Gangotri of music. Underline or write on question, which is the Gangotri of music? Sam Veda is the Gangotri of music. Maximum it is asked in 1 mark. Yajur Veda. It is called a Veda of Yagnas. Underline this also. Which Veda is called the Veda of Yagnas? Yajur Veda is known as the Veda of Yagnas. It is composed in both the forms, prose and verses. This describes the hymns recited at the time of Yajnas, the religious practices and rituals. Atharva Veda. Atharva Veda describes various types of rituals and sanskaras. Underline this. What describes various types of ritual and sanskaras? I repeat. What describes various types of ritual and sanskaras? Atharva Veda describes various types of rituals and sanskaras. Upanishad. The Upanishadic literature gives us a different description and analysis of beginning of the universe, the mysteries of life and death. Upanishad. What does it give the information? Mysterious. Mysterious means Subhash Chandra Bose died in a plane crash. His death is still mystery. Nobody knows how he was dead. Taj Mahal is constructed, but there is one mistake in Taj Mahal. The water used to fall near the, near the place of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz. Nobody knows why it is happening. So these are the mysteries. Mysteries means which is never solved, which doesn't, the science even doesn't, and technology doesn't have the answer. That is a mystery. The mysteries of life and death, materialistic and spiritual world, etc. Bridhanya and Chandogya are the earliest of Upanishad in the dialogue form. They are 108 in all as mentioned in Muktiko Upanishad. Now, Brahmanical literature. Now, Brahmanical literature is a short note that can be asked in 4 marks. Okay, in the same this paragraph there is one short note Ramayana Mahabharata. This is also asked in 4 marks. Brahmanical literature. Now, many Brahmanical epics were composed to understand the meaning of Vedic literature. Any critical appreciation based on Vedas composed in the poetic form are included in Brahmanical literature. Vedic literature and directive principles regarding behavior have been explained broadly. Aryanyakas. What is Aryanyakas? Aryans used to spend their last phase of life in Aranyakas, making their ashram in Aryanyakas, means in forest. In olden time, there were no schools. Okay, so the teachers, they were supposed to teach the students in forest. Students used to go to the ashram, used to live there. And what about exams were? At midnight in 2:30, they used to just wake up and have some woods from the forest. This is the exam. Looking in the water and just put an arrow in the fish eyes. This is exam. This type of exam for them. Not this learning and all thing. You must be enjoying the wow. Yes, exam but it's not that good. This thing is very good. And there was no passing by. You are supposed to pass only. So Aryans used to spend their last phase of life in Aranyakas, making their ashrams in Aranyakas, means forest. They composed literature based on philosophy, which was the result of their deep thinking. It is known as Aranyakas. They used to make one literature, and literature was made after thinking a lot, after analyzing a lot, and that thing is known as Aranyakas. Vedangas. What is Vedangas? The Vedangas literature deals with the religious practices and rituals, grammar, astrology and astronomy. These things are included in Vedangas. They used to do the study and analysis of this thing. Now Ramayana and Mahabharata. Now Ramayana and Mahabharata are the two great epics of Indian epics. The present form of these epics can be traced back to the 2nd century. The Ramayana has a story of Ramchandra, the king of Ayodhya. The Ramayana is the smaller epic than the Mahabharata. Ramayana is smaller than Mahabharata. Mahabharata is a big thing. Mahabharata is a great Indian epic. Mahabharata means politics. There is a politics. It narrates means tells the stories, many attractive stories of adventure. The Mahabharata is the world's largest epic, has 1 lakh verses. This describes the war between Kauravas and Pandavas. Kauravas were 100, Pandavas were 5. Between them there was a war. So Mahabharata describes the war between Kauravas and Pandavas. Besides, it also consists of numerous stories. Number of stories are included in Mahabharata. The Bhagavad Gita, a part of Mahabharata, expounds means spreads the deep philosophical principles. It conveys means pass the message of achieving moksha or salvation through jnana, knowledge, karma and bhakti. But the epic of Ramayana and Mahabharata have been influencing millions of Indians and their literature for a long time. But millions of Indians are influenced, are attracted towards Ramayana and Mahabharata. Now, they have implanted motivational seeds of sanskars in Indians. In Indians, they get the sanskar from Ramayana and Mahabharata. During this period of Sanskrit literature was produced, which contained a good combination of religious and worthy aspects of life. The Purans played an important role in explaining initial Vedic religion of earlier time. During this period, many scriptures, Smruti Grantha, were composed. These scriptures dealt with science and philosophy. For example, Kautilya's Arthashastra. Arthashastra means statistic. That is invented by Kautilya. Kautilya means Chanakya. Kautilya's Arthashastra is a book of management as well as a book on various topics such as art, mathematics, and other sciences. The Smruti Grantha as explains the religious teachings, laws, and customs. The earlier Buddhist literature was written in Pali languages. Now we are talking about Buddhist literature. There was a language which was Pali. It was written in Pali language. As it is divided into 3 sections, it is known as Tripitaka. Pali Buddhist literature is divided into 3 sections. That's why it is known as Tripitaka. That is the question. What is Tripitaka? Now, what does Tripitaka consist of? Underline, write down. What does Tripitaka consist of? It consists of Sukta Pitaka, Vinay Pitaka, and Abhidhamma Pitaka. These are the 3 sections divided. Besides, many other works were also composed in Buddhist literature. There are so many works means so many books, so many dramas are written in Buddhist literature. Gupta period was known as the golden period of the growth and development of Sanskrit poem and dramas. This came in chapter number 3. Gupta period is known as a golden period of art. Why? Because during Gupta period, education, business, sports, dramas, art, architecture, sculpture, everything was developed. Everything was developed. So Gupta period is known as golden period of art. See, it repeated in chapter 4 also, and it has been repeated in chapter 3 too. 3, 2, T double O. It doesn't mean the chapter 2. So the great writers like Kalidas, Bhavabhuti, Bhairavi, Bhartrihari, Banabhat, Manga, and many other belong to the period. This all belong to the Gupta period. Okay. So, write down question. Which are the great writers belong to the Gupta period? Which are the great writers belong to the Gupta period? Answer is the great writer Kalidas, Bhavabhuti, Bhairavi, Bhartrihari, Banabhat, Manga belong to the Gupta period. Okay. Of this, Kalidas is known all over the world. He also known as poet of poet. His works, Kumar Sambhava. This question is very necessary. Which are the work of Kalidas? It can be asked in MCQ. Which is the work of Kalidas or which is not the work of Kalidas? So Kalidas, the work of Kalidas are Kumar Sambhava, Raghuvansham, Meghdut, Abhignam Shakutalam, and Rudu Samhar. These are the 5 works of Kalidas. Are renowned for their best poetic and dramatic style. Bana wrote Kadambari. There is a question. Who wrote Kadambari? Repeat. Who wrote Kadambari? Bana wrote Kadambari. And Harsha Charit, a biographical of King Harsha. He also wrote Harsha Charit. That was a biography of King Harsha. Biography means autobiography. Other works of the period are Bhavabhuti's Uttara Ramcharit, Bhairavi's. See, these are the books. Bhagavati wrote Uttara Ramcharit. Bhairavi wrote Kirtana Junyam. These all are important. One more question. Vishakha Datta's Mudra Rakshasa and Shudraka's Marchakititam and Dandi's Dashkuma Charitra. These are the writers who have written different books. You are supposed to remember this. This doesn't stop over here. Still more names are there, and it all comes for 1 month. No need to get confused. I'll tell you the plan how to do it. As the time comes, I'll tell you how to learn this chapter 4. So no need to worry. In this lesson, this type of names are there. The subject of this work were political events, romance, religious, comedies, and philosophy. This is the subject. The things were made of. Now, verses were composed in the earlier form of Gujarati languages. In course of time, Gujarati language developed and many literary work were composed in it. The heritage of Gujarati literature was made prosperous by literature contribution of Narsi Mehta, Mirabai, Dayaram, Akho, Premchand, Pritam and others who composed beautiful verses, song, garba, narrative poems and chappas, etc. After the scholars like Narad, Naval Ram, Kishorlal Mashurwala, Pannalal Patel, Umashankar Joshi, Mahipatram, Rupram Nilkant, Govardhan Ram Tripathi and other enriched means decorate the Gujarati literature through their works. These were the people who made Gujarati work very famous everywhere. The 4 Dravidian languages. Which are the 4 Dravidian languages? See, South Indian, all the people are known as Dravidians. Okay, Telugu, Malayali, whoever it is, they all are Dravidians. So, the 4 Dravidian languages, that is Tamil, Telugu, Kannada and Malayalam, developed their own script and literature. Tamil is the oldest of this with its literature belonging to early centuries of the Christian era. According to tradition, 3 literary gatherings and sangams were held at which many sages and poets recited their composition. They contained many themes like politics, war and love. 3 things were there. And they were supposed to write everything on this: politics, war and love. The famous works of this body of literature includes Ittutokai. Ittutokai means composition of 8 poems. The Tolkapiyam, that is grammar, and Pathupattu, the 10 songs. Thiruvalluvar wrote the famous Kurai, underline this. Thiruvalluvar wrote the famous Kurai. Who wrote Kurai? Thiruvalluvar. Thiruvalluvar wrote the famous Kurai, which in verse deals with many aspects of life and religion. The Shilpadikaram and Manai Mekhalai are some of the most famous works of early Tamil literature. Underline this. Which are the famous works of early Tamil literature? So, the Shilpadikaram and the Mani Mekhalai are some of the most famous verses of the Tamil literature. So, here we referred about language and literature. We referred about ancient Indian literature. We went through Brahminical literature. What is Aranyakas, Vedangas. We learned about 2 great Indian epics, that is Mahabharata, Ramayana, and even Gita, that is a part of Mahabharata. Mahabharata is a great epic. Then we learned about the Buddhist religion. This was only 1 paragraph of Buddhist whole. It can be asked in 2, 3 or 4 marks. Then we learned about the Gujarati literature, who were the Gujarati writers that wrote everything. That also come for 2 or 3 marks. Now, medieval literature. In medieval literature also, there are different information given about the different books written over here. After that, we'll have the Mughal literature, and there were some Mughal people also who came to India, and where they wrote few books. Let us go with medieval literature. In this lecture, we won't be finishing full medieval literature, but little bit I'll continue. I'll give you the introduction. What is medieval literature? Medieval age. We have passed through 3 ages: ancient age, middle age, and modern age. Okay. So, in the medieval period, what was constructed? That all thing is medieval literature. Let us go through it. During the beginning of the medieval age in North India, the language of literature was Sanskrit. In medieval age, the main language was Sanskrit. how now we feel like that we want to learn English. Okay, English is not the main language. Okay, English is not the main language, but during that time the main language was Sanskrit. So the great works were composed during this period were in Sanskrit, but the great works that were written, that was to be get ready, that was composed, that all were composed in Sanskrit language, because Sanskrit was the main language in those days. In this age, two great works were written in Kashmir. First work was Somdeva's Katha Sarit Sagar, and second was Kalahana's Raj Tarangini. This is a 1 mark question. Underline it. Somdeva's Katha Sarit Sagar and Kalahana's Raj Tarangini. There are first historical books of India. Not there. These are. There is a printing mistake. Not there. These. THEAC. These are. THI is this name. These are first historical books of India. Okay. There is a grammatical mistake. The sentence should be those were the first historical book of India. But it is written that these are the first historical book of India. Another famous work of this time is Gita Govind by Jaydeva. Underline this. Who wrote Gita Govind? Gita Govind by Jaydeva, which is one of the first finest poem in Sanskrit literature. As we have stated before, this was a period when Upper Brahma's languages have started developing in modern Indian languages. One of the earliest work in early form of Hindu was Prithviraj Raso by Chandabardai. Underline this. Who wrote Chandabardai? Prithviraj Raso wrote Chandabardai. 1 mark question. This, the work that marks the beginning of in Hindi literature, deals with heroic deeds of Prithviraj Chauhan. Prithviraj Raso is written the heroic. Heroic means great work done by great fights, great war done by Prithviraj Chauhan. In this time, Sanskrit literature made a great stride in South India. For some time, Jainism influenced Kannada literature. As this literature flourished for few time, Jainism came over here and it also spread. In this time, Sanskrit literature made a great stride in South India. For some time, Jainism influenced Kannada literature. The poet Pampa composed Adi Puran. Underline this. The poet Pampa composed Adi Puran and Vikrama Arjun Vijayant. 2 books. The poet Pampa composed Adi Puran and Vikrama Arjun Vijayant. The poet Ponna, underline this also. The poet Ponna wrote Shanti Puran. You must be thinking that so this type of names are coming. But what we do? We don't have the choice. We have to learn these all things. So don't worry. But we don't have choice. So we are supposed to learn it. The poet Pampa. See. The poet Ponna wrote Shanti Puran describing the life of 16th Jain Tirthankars. Tirthankar are the 16 Jain places of the Jainism. The poet Ranna, now give the Ranna. Which poet gave? The poet Pampa, the poet Ponna, and now the poet Ranna. One mark question can be asked from this. It is very important too. So the poet Ranna composed 2 books, namely Ajitnath Puran and Gadayut. The poet, namely Pampa, Ponna and Ranna, are known as trio. Trio means 3 people. Trio of early Kannada literature. The poet Kamban composed Ramayana. Underline this. The poet Kamban composed Ramayana. In Tamil languages, apart from this, other famous literary works were written in Tamil languages. I think we should explain till here. The next session, because these names appears everywhere. So in the next session we'll continue. Next session will continue from here. Till that, just take care of yourself and just go through the lesson. Read it. Okay? Thank you very much. We'll continue in the next lecture.